I felt so much affection for these people that
Yeah.
I didn't have to act. Things. And when I had to say goodbye to Divine, she
Yeah.
comes to the door and gives me that notebook. That was one of the first things we shot.
Oh, wow.
And
And that's the very end of the movie.
I already
Wow.
felt so much for her as an
Wow.
actor and a person because she was so amazing.
Oh. Welcome, everyone, to this SAG-AFTRA Foundation conversation with the cast of The Holdovers. And I want to wish you all congratulations on all the amazing accolades your film has earned, not to mention Golden Globe nominations. How does it feel to see the film get such a wonderful reception?
Amazing.
Right. I mean,
Real.
I mean, I knew it was a good movie, but it's exceeded even my expectations for it. It's really wonderful.
Oh, I'm so glad. And Dominic, I'd like to start with you as our resident newcomer. Is it true that you beat out 800 actors for this role? I read that figure in the New Yorker and I thought, that doesn't seem possible, but I actually do believe it.
That's what they say. I guess that's the number that's been going around. Yeah. I mean,
That
I
must feel
think,
surreal.
yeah, I think that was all before they had come across me. Like, I wasn't a part of that initial wave of auditions. I
Right.
think he wasn't happy with those and then came elsewhere, like went to the schools to find some options. But yeah, I don't know. I can't wrap my head around that. But
That is a lot. But I was
yeah.
curious, Susan Shopmaker, of course, the wonderful casting director, and Alexander both loved what you brought to the table for this role. And I was curious, what is it that you think you did bring to this part that set you apart from others? I know it's hard to look at yourself, objectively, but now that the project is over and you've seen how it's been received, can you now relate to why they connected so deeply with you?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I know my hair was a big component of it, clearly.
I was going to say, if
Uh,
you came packaged that way, that probably helped, right?
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think it came down to a big part of it was ultimately, I think when I was able to read some things with Paul, I think that um, things, became more clear and made more sense. I mean, at least, maybe even if not for Alexander at that point, for me, I finally felt like I was able to kind of take this on and really see myself doing it with these other actors. But to answer your question, I mean, I don't know. I think I know Alexander really takes his time and care in the casting process. I know he weighs heavily like the success of a movie on how well it's casted. So,
Mm.
I think uh, he's one of the few people out there who has the ability to see something in a nobody like me just out of high school and sees that I can do something like this. So it's
Yeah.
really, I think, credit to him.
Well, I remember a similar story with Chris Klein in Election. I think he discovered Chris in a weight room at a
Exactly. Yeah.
college, and that performance reminds me of yours. There's something just so natural and organic and sort of unspoiled about it, and I
Oh,
think it's such a great reference. Yeah,
a lot of the performances too. I mean, even
yeah.
like the liquor store, that guy was
Oh,
working here, he's
I
always,
love that guy.
yeah, he's really great about taking these real people and making them shine on screen.
Yeah. Well, he did that with you. You seem very real in the few moments that I've known you.
Thank you.
To what degree did you relate to Angus? Obviously, we are not the characters we play, but was
Hmm.
there aspects of him that felt fresh to you? You're sort of not too far from his age, and he's dealing with a lot of angst in the future and family. Did that feel
Yeah,
familiar to you, or do you feel like you were able to access it, even though maybe it's not your present state of mind?
totally. I mean, well, I think there's we're very different people, me and this character. I think office how we existed in high school as well. I had a very different experience. I think I had a lot more friends and I was more involved in things. Like I was a performer in high school. I was doing
Right, right.
theater.
So that
So
was probably a good outlet for your angst, I'm assuming.
totally, yeah. Yeah, yeah, right. I'm maybe festering as much as this kid is.
Right.
Um, However, I think what really helped me connect with this kid was just his uh I don't know, his need and desire for direction and someone to help him find that direction. And
Mm,
when I think about when I was auditioning for this film at that time, my senior year, I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do in college and just, I guess, some ideas about what I wanted to do with my life. And acting was the only thing that was really really passionate about at the time. And it really took this film, I guess, to give me the confidence to
Mm.
pursue that and feel like maybe I can be successful with this. So I think Angus kind of faces a lot of the similar things you see where, and you get hints of it where, one of the students, like, I'm supposed to go to Cornell, and like a lot of these kids kind of have it planned out what they're supposed to do, but Angus doesn't have that clarity, I guess, at this point, like a lot of the other kids do. And I felt maybe similar to that when I was in high school.
Oh, sure. I think most of us did. I don't
Totally.
think most of us had that all planned out. I
Right.
have to say my one of my favorite scenes is that beautiful moment where your bunkmate has had the accident in the bed. Such a sweet kid. Wow, what a great little actor he is.
Yeah.
And I was so curious, just from a storytelling perspective, just the addition of that scene, what do you think that brought to our understanding of Angus? Like what import did that scene have for you in understanding who this guy is? Because clearly he cares about people. When you
Hmm.
think about that scene, we didn't need it in the narrative, but
Hmm.
I continue to think about it as being very illuminating of who he is. So tell me what
Yeah.
you think a moment like that brought to your understanding of him.
Yeah, I think that moment in particular really kind of reveals the level of emotional intelligence I think that
Mm,
that Angus has, and
yeah,
one of the big things I love about the character and why I was really excited to play it is because he's able to connect with these older people, a teacher at the school and a cook at the school who have very different lives and experiences and all of
right.
those things. He's able to connect with them on a deeply emotional level, and I think that scene was important to really show that he's able to connect on that level with other people, and he's not this kind of, I don't know, sociopathic.
Well, I think it's probably his problem too, is that he's so natural and cares so much about organic interactions with people. He can't be phony, and that can really be a hindrance, right?
Totally, totally.
Well, I love that. You just brought so much humanity to it. And I feel like I knew so many Anguses growing up, and they were usually my friends. So I think you're in
That's
good
good.
company.
I think it'd be a good one to have for sure.
The smart kid, right?
Yeah.
Well, Paul, congratulations. Unfailingly always excellent in everything you do. So this was not a surprise. But I was curious for you after all these years and all the amazing roles you've played, including Chuck Rhodes. I miss him a lot. Um, what bubbled up for you emotionally when you first read this script? And did you immediately have a connection to Mr. Hunnam? Did you have to find your way into him, or did he immediately feel like somebody you liked and wanted to learn more about?
Yeah, he did immediately feel like somebody I liked. I mean, and I did want to learn more about him. It immediately set off lots of associations in my head with lots of teachers I'd had. I grew up in an environment like this. My father
Mm,
was a professor, my mother was
right.
a teacher, my grandparents were all teachers.
Oh, wow.
I'm surrounded by teachers, and teaching is a very challenging profession and very
The hardest, you might say.
very, yeah, and one of the most amazing too. I have huge respect for teachers. Even a guy like this, who I thought it was interesting, is a guy who is absolutely convinced he's doing the right thing, and he is in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
but he's going about it the wrong. And I think that kind of thing is super funny and sad to me, as somebody who is that
Yeah.
committed to the wrong way of going about something. Alexander makes a really great distinction between nice and kind.
I
What's
love
really
that.
interesting about this guy is he is kind. He's always kind. He
Absolutely.
just can't access it very well. And he doesn't care about being nice because he doesn't think nice is important. But also he
Right.
has a hard time dealing with nice and knowing how to sort of deal with people because he's so far outside of any zone of acceptance for any number of reasons.
Right.
Financially, he's a scholarship kid at that place. He's not
Right.
like those kids.
Right. And we didn't know that early on. Of course, we
No,
discovered that as the story
no.
goes on. Hmm.
He's socioeconomically from a different place.
Hmm.
And he's got these conditions, these things that set him even further outside.
I know. Poor
He's
guy.
a terrible misfit. He's a terrible outsider who's built this really elaborate idea around himself because of this place. It's given him all of this sort of sense of dignity and purpose and moral rectitude and all of these things that seem so important
Right.
to him. You watch them all fall away
Right.
throughout. And
But
he,
that's interesting that you bring that up. He and Angus actually have that in common. They care so much about morals.
Mhm.
And that school, that institution doesn't reward moral behavior. It rewards money. It rewards who your
Yes,
dad is, how
yeah,
slick looking you are.
It
how
does.
handsome you are. And that's what I think they have in common.
Yes, and it's phony in some way. And
Yeah.
this guy goes along with it because it's comforting and safe and was a safe, comforting place. But he knows it's phony at some level too.
Yes, he
And
does.
it's like, so it's this idea of freeing himself from the stuff he doesn't even know he needs to be freed from. And he certainly doesn't know how to be freed from it. And
Right.
these two people help him free himself a little bit.
They they do. They absolutely do. And we're almost exactly 20 years from Sideways coming out, Paul. How did it feel to work with Alexander again on set? Did it feel like all that time had passed, or was there an immediate synergy, like,
No, I
blink an
mean,
eye and you're back?
yeah, I mean, we became friends after Sideways, so there was that. It's already
Right.
a friend, which is
Of
so
course.
rare. I mean, no,
Right.
to have that at all, to have worked with him once was amazing. Then to have been able to become friends and then work with him again, it was all just, I never expected to do it.
Yeah.
So, and
It's
it's very easy to do. It's very easy to sort of.
everyone I've talked to who's ever worked with him has said it's just magical experience. And it's so
It
funny
is.
thinking about Miles and Sideways. I think Miles and Mr. Hunnam would be fast friends because they both care so much. And even just thinking about Miles in the classroom, there's
Yes.
a lot of connective tissue. It's almost like Mr. Hunnam's his uncle.
There is some interesting connection between the two of them. I never talked to Alexander about him if he ever intended there to be some
Yeah.
connection with the two things, but there sort of is. I like this guy a little bit better because he's less self.
Really?
He doesn't have the self pity the other guy does. I
That's
don't think he
true. That's a good
doesn't,
point.
and he doesn't. And it's like, and there's something a little bit more. He's got a
And
little bit more pizzazz. He's a little bit less. He's a little bit less self pitying.
well, he's also not mourning the loss of a relationship too, at least that we know of.
True.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
yeah. Well, he's mourning the loss. Yeah, he's mourning the loss of never having connected with another human being, particularly.
Correct. There is its own peril in that, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Well,
indeed.
congratulations, really just
Nice.
again to add to your collection, a spectacular showing once again.
Yes.
Davine, so nice to see you again. And as mentioned, we met a couple years ago, and that, of course, was not your first performance in Dolemite, but certainly the one that I think we a lot of us got to know you through that incredibly fun performance. You are one of the busiest actors working today, and you also, to me, also seem to have the most incredible range of anyone who I've seen recently. To go from Only Murders to The Idol to High Fidelity, it's really incredible, and bringing with it this stage presence and your incredible musical skills, it's pretty amazing. You kind of have it all.
That means a lot. Thank you very, very, very much.
Well, I'm just speaking the truth. But
But
then to
that's
see,
that's a really sweet thing to say.
well,
Thank
I know you've worked very hard as well. And then to see you segue to a role like this that's so quiet and so, I think,
you.
on a cellular level, I've never seen a better embodiment of grief in my life. Just her body language and the fatigue and her eyes. It's just really, I think so many people can relate to everything that you are portraying on screen. So,
Thank
my
you.
question for you is, how did preparing for this role feel distinct to you versus other roles? Was it a quieter process? Where did you study other performances? Did you read certain books? I know you did great accent work, but
Thank
outside of that, just getting into the emotional skin of Mary, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, so usually most of my jobs I have under a month to prepare for, usually
Right,
weeks.
right. Not a lot of time.
And I found this one I had this role was presented to me like right before Thanksgiving. I got it officially like I think the weekend after Thanksgiving. And so we had what like a month before we start
Wow.
like we came to Boston in a month. And then we had kind of like which was revelatory for me 3 weeks in
Wow.
which we had unified table reading and text analysis. And so that introduction into the world, like during the break, I was pulling images of clothing,
Mm,
hairstyles, um, pulling references from TV shows during that time, album covers, because
mm,
I'm really visual.
right.
And I like fashion. So I'm always like, I need to like physically see what's going on.
Right.
And so in reading the script, I quickly saw she was a smoker. So I
Right.
was like,
Hmm.
I don't do that. So
Right.
I'm going to learn that. And without me asking, sent 2 boxes full of cartons full of cigarettes, fake ones.
Okay.
And so
what do those taste like, by the way? I've always wondered, those fake cigarettes.
Nasty.
Yeah, I was
like
gonna
a
say.
tea bag almost. Yeah, like a tea bag. And it doesn't long story short, I had to switch to real ones because it wasn't, you can't really control it. It's like it's thin and it was too much. So like after the first week, I was like, I told the props guy, I was like, I'm just going to sneak a couple of. Because I knew if I would have said something, everybody would be like, no, don't do it. But I knew like I had to have that. And so the dialect, this is what I did. I tried to find as many things about her that was different from me. And because I knew I was going to need those as markers to rely on throughout the process. And because I never wanted to get comfortable, I never wanted her to become colloquial or comfortable. You know what I mean? Like too pedestrian, maybe is the word to me.
Because she has a distance from people. She's not just immediately their best friend. She has her moments of warmth, but she really is kind of distant, purposely distant.
Yeah. Right. And I think I think something that's brilliant that not only David does with the writing, but Alexander did. We had this conversation of like the time period, the race, what does that mean? And we play with this idea of like, hey, we already know. We know what this is. It is what it is. We didn't further push on it, but I made sure in the clothing, in the hairstyles, and how she talked, that her culture was present, but it wasn't being shoved in your face. Do you know what I mean?
It was very subtle.
And I thought that would be a great way in which, because also it was important to me that everyone, no matter what they looked like, gender, whatever, everyone connected to it. So something else that I did was that I used I call it it became like my spectrum of grief, that I use the stages of grief. And that I wanted to, I basically, each time that she showed up on the screen, I would ask myself, where is she on the spectrum of grief?
Like today she's in acceptance.
In
Next
this
day
moment,
she's angry.
in this moment, right now, this is where she's at. Yeah. And what I found that was fascinating, and in my research, was that I don't really know who came up with this like stages of grief. It's like a convenient, nice thing for people to like connect to. But what I found in my research that was fascinating is that most times people sometimes are feeling 2 stages at the same time.
Oh, right.
People can
it's not a linear process. I'm assuming.
We go from stage 5, as it were, and jump to 1. Or and be like, I'm okay, I'm cool. And you think they're done. And then they're like, no, actually, I'm in denial. So it's this whole roller coaster. And the biggest thing I found was ironical humor. That people's humor is a little dark and a little sordid because they're just so comfy with death at that moment.
Well, they have no filter at that point, probably.
Baby, there's no filter. And that's where I think these two had the perfect storm for her of the meshing. Because can you imagine if Mr. Hunnam told her a joke? She would be like, you know what I mean? And like just ignore him, or like, you know what I mean? I don't know. It was the perfect storm. And what I love is that, and I hope we show the vastness of this institution, this corporation, truly, that they're how alone they are. But in them being alone in this space, there's a shared loneliness that they all have. And this place is big enough. Like I love when Angus is just, roaming the halls.
I know.
I love that montage. He's eating ice cream. He's then it's just like, it almost reminds me of is it 13 Candles? Is that the one when they're in the
Are you thinking of Judd Nelson running through the halls at the high school breakfast club?
Yes. How they're
I had
just
the same thought.
Around. Yeah, that is something.
All the rules have fallen away from the place.
Exactly.
Place. All that confining shit is gone.
Exactly.
And there's no real punishment for any of the behavior at that point. So why not?
No. Like
Yeah.
I'm telling him don't curse,
Right.
or don't eat too many brownies, like
Right. But
it's
that's
just
the mother in you though, because you have no one to mother. So he's the closest, child to
yes.
whom you
And
can
I
give
love
comfort.
how that organically just happens. And it's just a beautiful thing of how it's a beautiful story to me, and how three broken things can begin to patch holes
Hmm.
one another. That almost in a sense of, if someone was whole or had it together and tried to help us, we wouldn't
Wouldn't work.
we would
Yeah.
cut
Yeah.
off. We would shut off. And so it's like we all have different places of brokenness, and yet it helps us connect. We're similar and we're different. We're similar enough that we're willing to listen
Right.
to hear the other person, and different enough where we don't feel like, oh, wait, you're trying to, project on me and whatever. We all know, like, just enough. We actually really know how to read each other very well, our characters,
No, it's
consider we're all like very emotionally in tuned, which is,
Yeah.
I,
Well, you're all
I
very emotionally intelligent, I think, and
yeah,
that's the bond, and you care a lot about each other. And on that
yeah.
note, I would love to talk about Paul and Dominic, the final scene between the two of you. I read
Mhm.
an interview with David, your amazing screenwriter, and he said a note that Alexander had given him was, "In no way are these men going to hug." He was very adamant they are not going to hug, maybe because of the time period, or maybe just that wasn't what they would do. So tell me about creating that sadness and that separation and the longing that these two men have for each other without the physical contact. So maybe Dominic, tell me a little bit about your physicality in that moment and the interplay and the direction also you got from Alexander of how to play that moment.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like well, just that scene as a whole. It's difficult because you're saying things that aren't exactly really, I guess, what you're saying. It's very conversational on the page, but I guess what you're really trying to tell the person is a lot deeper than
Right.
maybe you know how to put into words.
Like they love each other at that point. They may want to deny that, but there's
Yeah,
love there. Yeah.
sure. Yeah. And I think what was challenging for me, I think, this being my first process and all of that, and that like being towards the end of what we are doing, I, and Alexander is very particular about not letting things get too emotional and too
Yes.
in-depth emotional. And I found I was getting really emotional at that time, and that was the challenge of just holding that back so it was right in the right place for him.
Right.
But
Like
yeah,
not overdoing it essentially.
exactly. But I think, yeah, like physically, he tries to walk away once and his hands are in his pockets, but then finally when he goes, he's running with his hands out of his pockets. And it's just, I
Yeah, he
think,
seems to be like he's been let free into the wilderness.
exactly. Yeah. There's a freedom there, and
Right.
they don't get it right away, but like by the end, it's complete. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely a highlight. And I think when I look back at that moment, it's like every scene I did, I'm able to look at that and be like, yeah, that was the realist I could have been in that moment.
Oh, that's a good feeling.
Totally.
And Paul, how do you think Mr. Hunnam is feeling in that moment? He has pride, but also he seems very sad.
Yeah, and I was going to say it's precisely the not touching each other that actually made it even more emotional for me.
Mm. Oh, yeah. Because a hug is actually kind of an easy
Well, that would have been
physicalizer,
that would
right?
have been because actually it made it more and more and more so every time we did it because we could
Oh,
touch each,
oh,
and that's actually what does it. Is that
right.
if we had, that would have like dissipated all of it. It's the restraint, the constant, it's the tension of not being able to do it, to reach to each
Oh,
other like that. And he does love the kid. And I think for me, the thing that was really that I realized while I was doing it, and I was saying about teachers, he will never see this kid again. And even
oh,
if he still was going to teach there, he would never probably see the kid again. And that
wow.
happens over and over and over to those people.
Yeah.
They say goodbye all the time to children that they've
Oh,
taken care of. And he's saying goodbye to this kid who he maybe one of the only kids he really felt a connection to. He's never going to see him again. And he
oh, that's so
knows.
sad.
And yeah, but it's like, but
Oh,
it's terrible. No, it's heartbreaking. But think about teachers are doing it over and over and over again. You're letting your children go
oh,
over
just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
hundreds
people in
and
the
hundreds
world.
of kids,
Right.
and you won't see probably most of them. And it's
Oh.
like even the ones you don't like, you have to say goodbye. It's like, and so
Yeah.
I mean, that was the thing that I remembered thinking. But a lot of what it too. I mean, I want to say about Dom, these tapes of him that they showed me. And I was amazed just by him and all these things, but the intelligence that he just has as a person and
Yeah.
the emotional intelligence he has as a person came through so strongly that I was like, this can't be anybody else but this kid. I mean, sorry, I don't mean to call you a kid, Dom.
I'm a
Man,
kid.
Hey, enjoy being
you're
a
not
kid
a
as
kid.
long as
You're
you
not a
can.
kid anymore. You can drink. I saw you drinking earlier.
He's of age, everyone. He's of
Yeah,
age.
yeah, yeah. She's of age. She's of age. No, but it's like, it just was, so, and but the Divine too. It's like I felt so much affection for these people
Yeah.
that I didn't have to act. Like, so when I had to say goodbye to Divine, she
Yeah.
comes to the door and gives me that notebook. That was one of the first things we shot.
Oh, wow.
And
That's the
I felt
very end of the movie.
I already
Wow.
felt so much for her as an
Oh,
actor and person because she was so amazing.
oh. I wish we had hours and hours more with you, but I do want to ask, what is one thing that you hope someone feels when they watch this movie? What is an emotion that they walk away with, good or bad? Maybe Dominic, tell me, what is something that you hope people feel when they see this?
I think hope, I think is a good one. You know, I these people seem initially seem pretty hopeless, and it's kind of hard to maybe imagine where they can possibly find hope. They're really in it, pretty bad. And I think if anybody takes anything from it, it's like, yeah, especially at this time of year,
Mm.
it's nice that it takes place over Christmas. It's not the easiest time of year for a lot of
No.
people, and it can be hard. So having just that hope for the future, I guess, when things maybe aren't clear, and understanding that when it doesn't feel like it, there actually are people in your life that are right there when you don't even know it.
And connections to be made, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. And Devan, what do you think about that?
I would say to piggyback off of that, that they're not alone.
Mm.
Not alone, and to be courageous enough to reach out because it just
Mm.
might surprise you. Sometimes the most unexpected people will show up for you. It may not be that close, circle of five or whatever. Sometimes if you dare to and extend yourself, oftentimes you'll be happily surprised to see who will show up for you.
And also someone's probably feeling the same or knows what you're
Yeah.
going through. I think that's what I think too.
Mm.
Empathy,
And how
compassion,
about you, Paul? Close us
empathy,
out, Paul.
empathy. No, I say the same
Mm.
thing. You are not alone. All there
Mm.
is connection. That's it. That's all there is that anybody has. And it's really could be with anybody. Absolutely. Nope. You're
Oh,
not alone is hopefully the basic thing.
and that's a powerful message this time of year, to your point, Dominic. This is a hard time for folks. And I think that's what the movie shows us is no matter what, to your point, Divine, there's always someone to talk to and at least listen. Absolutely. Well, you all seem to have an amazing connection amongst yourselves, and I'm so glad you found each other. So thank you, Alexander and Susan and David, for all these incredible artists who made this movie possible. So thank you so much for your time. Congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you. Thank you
much.
so much.